I've always been dumped because I'm not good with words. Because of that, I stayed single until I was 35 and couldn't get married. Then I met Lisa, who was 5 years younger than me. She was assigned to the sales support department where I work as a temporary employee. She's a bright woman with a lovely smile, always treating me kindly even though I'm not good at making jokes. As I was teaching her the job, I started to take an interest in her and became more and more attracted to her. It was the first time I had felt this way, and I had never been treated so kindly by a woman before. I pursued her relentlessly. And finally, we started dating. Lisa was divorced with a 10-year-old daughter, Amy. I told my parents that I was dating her with the intention of marrying her, and although they were worried about me becoming a stepfather, I was determined. I told them there was no one as wonderful as her, and I was sure we would have a happy family together. I had met Amy before we got married, and fortunately, she has really warmed up to me now. And so we got married and started living happily together as a family of 3. Lisa and I decided not to have any more children. Since I was just a regular employee, I couldn't afford to raise many kids, and I thought having one daughter was enough. Our life wasn't rich, but we were happy. Every day, when I come home, my wonderful wife, with the best smile, and my adorable daughter are waiting for me. Just thinking about that gave me the strength to work hard. Then, one day, tragedy struck. It happened 4 years after I married Lisa. She passed away due to an illness. By the time the symptoms showed, it was too late for treatment. Her condition deteriorated rapidly. During her hospitalization, Amy always stayed cheerful and did her best. We started cooking together every day, planning to throw a big party with all of her favorite dishes when her mom came home from the hospital. We believed she would get better. We managed to keep going, just the 2 of us. Several months after Lisa's hospitalization, when Amy and I had just started to get used to life on our own, it happened. That day, I bought some roses, her favorite flowers, to cheer her up at the hospital. I hoped that showing her the beautiful flowers would cheer her up, even if just a little. But when I arrived, her condition had worsened critically, and she passed away soon after. Suddenly, Amy and I were left alone, stunned. What's going to happen now? I was really worried. And so began my life with just Amy and me. At that time, Amy was in her 2nd year of middle school. It was a difficult period for us. At first, Amy and I were living a normal life, but after a while, I noticed something was off with her. She started to act out against me. I thought it was just a phase at first, but there was a reason behind it. Turns out, Amy was being harassed by her classmates at school. I found out when I happened to see her belongings. Her notebook was filled with hurtful words. Words like "poor girl from a single-father home" and "middle schooler living with a non-blood-related old man" were written there. I immediately reported the harassment to the school, but that only made things worse for Amy. She began to treat me even more harshly. Even so, I continued to love her as my own daughter, but my feelings never seemed to reach her. When Amy went to high school, she attended a different school from her classmates, and the harassment stopped. However, she remained cold towards me. Gradually, she started going out at night, and when I tried to talk to her about it, she would throw tantrums or yell at me. Then, as soon as she graduated from high school, Amy left home. She only said, "I'm going to live with my boyfriend. I'll be fine on my own," took her stuff, and left. After that, she rarely answered her phone, and I only occasionally received emails saying she was doing fine. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye, just like that. During that time, Amy never once came back home. Then one day, I was ordered to go to a client's office in a different region. It was a 2-day business trip. After finishing my work for the day, it was already late afternoon. I thought about having a drink back at the hotel. I bought a can of beer and some snacks at a convenience store near my hotel. On my way back, I was lured by a delicious smell. "Oh, is that a hot dog stall? Maybe I'll buy one." "Excuse me, can I get one hot dog?" "Yes, thank you." That's when I saw something shocking. The woman making hot dog in front of me was my daughter, Amy. "Amy, what are you doing here?" Dad." Amy looked thin, and her hair was unkempt. After a moment of surprise, she looked down and said with a bitter smile, "I'm embarrassed to be seen like this after so long. I'm shocked to see you here of all places." As I said that, Amy suddenly teared up, looking like she was about to cry. "What's wrong?" I asked in a hurry. But all she could say was, "I'm sorry." Then I suggested, "I'm staying at a hotel down the street tonight. Why don't you contact me after you finish? Let's talk for a bit." Amy just said, "Okay," and silently started making hot dog again. That night, I received a message from Amy, and we agreed to meet at a diner next to the hotel. When I arrived, Amy was already there, waving at me awkwardly. Sitting down, she seemed tense and kept looking down without saying a word. "So, how have you been? I was worried since I hadn't heard from you in a while," I asked casually. Amy looked sad and said, "I'm sorry. I guess this is my punishment for saying such terrible things to you, Dad." With that, she started to cry. Wondering what had happened, I decided to ask her about it. After leaving home, Amy had moved in with a man she was dating with the intention of marrying. He was 3 years older than her and was involved in music activities. Amy was originally a fan of his, and it seems like she had a big crush on him. However, he cheated on her with another woman, and Amy got dumped. Amy ended up spending a lot of money just to get by, and eventually ran out of savings. After being dumped by him, she couldn't focus on her job anymore and ended up quitting the company she worked for. After some time, she started working at a nearby supermarket and a hot dog stand to make ends meet. But even with that income, life was still a struggle. I was furious with that musician guy and thought about hitting him, but he had vanished, running from debt collectors, and no one knows where he is now. Amy said, crying, "This is all my fault. I brought this upon myself." I told her, "What's done is done. Can't help it. There's a saying about youthful indiscretions. If you don't mind, why don't you come back home? It might be a bit easier for you there." Upon hearing this, Amy showed big tears in her eyes. "But Dad, it feels too convenient to rely on you only when I'm in trouble." Looking sad, Amy said this, and I told her, "Parents are there to be leaned on in tough times. You're my daughter, Amy, so feel free to depend on me as much as you need." Dad, thank you. I'll think about it," Amy replied, wiping her tears with a handkerchief. After that, we chatted about trivial things for a while before parting ways. As a final word, I told Amy, "You can come back home any time." She smiled and nodded. A few months later, Amy returned home with her belongings. I decided to come back. she said with a smile. Seeing her, I said, "Welcome back, I've been waiting for you." After that, Amy and I started living together again. It was awkward at first, but after a month, we got used to each other, and Amy even started making jokes. Her once thin body gradually became healthier. I was relieved. Since coming back, Amy has been cooking every day. Her chicken soup, in particular, is outstanding. It has a gentle flavor, somewhat reminiscent of Lisa's chicken soup, sometimes bringing tears to my eyes. Seeing me like that, Amy asked, laughing, "Is it so delicious that you're about to cry?" "Yeah, it's so good it makes me want to cry." Amy laughed heartily, saying, "What's that supposed to mean?" Watching Amy's smile, I truly felt glad she was getting better. After returning home, Amy got a job at a local factory. She worked hard at her job while also doing her best with the household chores. I was really proud of her. Amy, making up for the time we were apart, took care of me in every way possible. Then, one day after 10 years into this life, Amy brought her boyfriend home. It seems he's her superior from the same workplace. He was 5 years older than Amy, a calm and kind-looking man. He greeted me politely, and I instantly felt that this man could make Amy happy. He even mentioned that he was considering marrying Amy. I told him, "Please take good care of Amy." Amy, blushing, said, "Dad, it's too early for that." About 6 months later, Amy was proposed to by him, and they decided to get married. I was a bit sad to see my daughter leave my side, but seeing her happy reassured me. Then, before I knew it, it was the day of the wedding. Amy asked me to walk her down the aisle, and there I was, arm in arm with my daughter, looking like a princess. As we walked, I was so nervous my mind went blank, but then Amy softly spoke to me. "Dad, I was happy because you were my father." Huh? When I glanced at my daughter's face, she was looking at me with a beautiful smile, just like Lisa in her younger days. With my vision blurred by tears, I managed to walk with her to the end and smiled at her. Then we took our seats at the reception hall. Looking around, I saw orange roses, my wife's favorite, decorated everywhere. In the center, my daughter, dressed in a pure white gown, was smiling happily. Then a staff member took the microphone and announced, "Now, the bride will read a letter to her parents." Amy stood up and began to speak, looking ahead. "To my mom in heaven, do you remember the promise we made before you passed away?" "Huh?" I looked up. "Mom, when I visited you in the hospital, you taught me how to make Dad's favorite chicken soup, other cooking recipes, and many other things. At that time, you made me promise to take care of Dad until I found someone special. I realized then that you wouldn't be with us much longer." I had no idea they had made such a promise. Amy had been bright every day, knowing that Lisa was going to pass away. Tears overflowed as I learned the truth after decades. I couldn't keep that promise right after Mom passed away. I'm sorry, but I realized Dad, although not good with words, is indeed the kindest and most loving person, just like Mom said. I now understand why Mom fell in love with Dad. Both Amy and I were in tears. "I love you so much, Dad." Her confession, choked with tears, filled my heart with overwhelming emotions. Then, looking ahead, Amy turned to gaze at me. "Dad, I'm getting married. Make sure to wash the laundry and not let it pile up. Put on your pajamas after you get out of the bath. Don't walk around naked, or you'll catch a cold." I watched my daughter. unable to speak through her tears. Then a staff member handed me the microphone, saying, "A few words from the father, please." "Amy, thank you for living with someone like me. I'm grateful. You're getting married now, so you can cry like this. Smile, like you always do." Then I turned to address her husband. "My daughter is a great cook and a very kind person. Please take good care of her. Make sure she's happy." I asked so and heard a strong reply, "Yes, I promise." I had no regrets left. And so, the wedding ended successfully. I truly felt blessed to have been a father to my daughter. I was glad to have married Lisa, and happy to have been Amy's dad. I never knew about such a promise, Lisa, worrying about me until the very end. That's just like you. I sat in an empty room, speaking to my wife's photo. After the wedding, Amy moved in with her husband, but still came to my house regularly to help with various things. So, I never felt lonely. Seeing the happy couple always warmed my heart. I continue to wish for Amy's happiness and support her in my own way. And now, I'm excited every day, looking forward to meeting my soon-to-be-born grandchild. "Samantha, you hate me, don't you?" In a drunken moment, I found myself asking this tough question to Samantha, a beautiful department head known for disliking men. I'm embarrassed to be seen that way. Then, she began to reveal a surprising reason for her coldness towards men. "My name is John. I'm 38. I worked in New York after graduating from college, but exhausted by a grueling job, I quit and returned to my hometown. I was drifting for a while, but then my middle school classmate, Mike, invited me to his company saying, 'Come work with us.' I was skeptical, thinking it might be a shady business, but it turned out to be a reliable company, loved by local businesses and corporations, making lighting fixtures for 50 years. At the interview, Mr. Smith, the president, greeted me in work clothes. He was all smiles, a genuinely nice guy. Surprisingly, they served coffee and jelly during the interview, which was informal but ended with a formal "We'll contact you in about a week with the results." So, when they called and asked, "When can you start?" I could hardly believe it and was really happy. This is how I got assigned to sales, and within a month, I felt at home in the company. Most of the employees were locals. Talking with colleagues about family and personal lives, we'd realize connections like my sister might have worked with you at the same part-time job in high school, or I used to live near your house. Has that barbershop closed down? It was a homey place, perfect for me. However, Samantha wasn't a local. She was quite tall, about 5'9". Her striking beauty made her seem unapproachable. She was so competent that she became a department head at 35. Apparently, she had worked at a major company in New York. But her demeanor was extremely aloof. When I submitted work she had requested, she would barely thank me without making eye contact. Yet, she would look at female employees, smile, and say warmly, "Thanks, Olivia, that was quick and really helpful." She might be called a cool beauty, but her attitude towards men and women was starkly different. Her overly formal attitude left me feeling dry. "Samantha hates men," Mike said, drinking his whiskey at a bar. "So she really doesn't like them. Did something happen?" "Well, being that tall, even if she's pretty, she's out of the ordinary." Mike frowned. "True, she's taller than most men, but I think she's attractive." When I expressed this, Mike, looking up at my height, said enviously, That's because you're taller than Samantha. Hey, you should date her. Indeed, I'm 6 feet tall, taller than Samantha. But regardless, I've always liked tall women. My family is tall, and growing up, I always thought my 5'8" mother was cool. I find tall women attractive. But even if I like her, she might not feel the same about me. I can't just date her. I think Samantha particularly dislikes me. It happened a week ago. I went on a day trip to San Antonio, so I bought some cookies as souvenirs. I'll leave Samantha's share here, I said, trying to put them on the corner of her desk. Then, she coldly rejected them, saying, "I don't need them." Honestly, I was quite shocked. I made up reasons like she might not like sweets or she's on a diet, just to convince myself. Indeed, she does seem particularly cold to you. Maybe it's that thing where you're mean to someone you like. Mike made a teasing comment, making me almost spit out my drink as I exclaimed, "What are you talking about? It's only you who's taller than Samantha. Maybe she's cold because she sees you as a man." That's impossible. There's no way that could be true. Sure, I'm tall. But I'm not good looking, and lately, I've started to develop a belly. I'm an unremarkable guy who doesn't attract women at all. I thought there's no way Samantha sees me as a man. I had a bit too much to drink yesterday, but I made it to work the next day and focused on my job. Around 3 p.m., having finished my tasks, I was about to catch up on some paperwork when something happened. "Samantha, I'm so sorry. I made a mistake with the order, and they said they need it delivered today." The female employee, nearly in tears, was Amy. She's just 23 but already has a 1-year-old child. "Then, we have no choice but to deliver it directly. Is the product in our warehouse?" Amy replied apologetically. "Yes, it's confirmed, but the delivery location is out of state, a 2-hour drive, and I have to pick up my child, so it's tough for me." Samantha sighed. "Then I'll go. Oh, but I have documents that I must finish by tonight." The usually cool Samantha seemed unusually troubled. I stood up and approached Amy. "I'll go. I'm free right now." "Really?" Amy looked at me with eyes full of gratitude. "Really? That would be a huge help," Samantha said in a soft voice. So, I loaded the products into the car at a warehouse 30 minutes away and set off for the 2-hour drive to the client. "I'm off then," I said, jingling the car keys. "John, please, take care," Samantha said, and she saw me off. I loaded the products successfully at the warehouse and headed to the client. They were an interior design company, scheduled to install lighting fixtures the next day. I arrived after 6 p.m. Expecting a grumpy old man to scold me for the order mistake, I was surprised to meet a young and pretty woman in charge. She must have been in her 20s. "I'm so sorry you had to bring this all the way here," she apologized, making me feel awkward. Insisting I take a break, she treated me to coffee and pound cake in the lounge. Her name was Jessica. She was 28 years old and the daughter of the company's president. "I guess you'll be taking over the business someday," I blurted out. "No, I'd rather get married if I find someone willing," she replied with a gentle smile. I thought someone like her would definitely find a good match soon. When I returned to the office, it was past 9 p.m. I didn't expect anyone to be there, but to my surprise, Samantha was still in the sales department. It seemed like she was waiting for me. "I'm sorry for troubling you." No, I should be thanking you, John. I really appreciate your help. Her tone of sincere gratitude warmed my heart. Let's head home, shall we? I turned off the lights in the office and locked up. On our way to the parking lot, Samantha suddenly asked, "Would you like to grab dinner together?" I was surprised. Samantha and I were far from close. In fact, she seemed to have a certain aversion to me. I doubted that two people like us, with such a strained relationship, would have much to talk about over dinner, and it might just end up being awkward. As I hesitated, she said, "Sorry, you can say no if you don't want to." Thinking that declining might hurt her feelings, I cheerfully said, "Let's go. I'm actually really hungry." It was late, so only diners and places serving alcohol were open. Since we had driven, we couldn't drink alcohol, but we decided to go to a popular local grill. By the way, this was also the place where I had drinks with Mike. "Welcome, table for two." Upon entering the restaurant, we were greeted by a delicious, appetizing aroma. My stomach immediately started to rumble. We were led to a small table in the corner. The distance between us was quite close. A soft, flowery scent wafted from Samantha. Maybe it was her shampoo. Being so conscious of her femininity, I felt strangely excited. "What would you like to drink?" When the waiter approached us, I ordered Coca-Cola. But Samantha said, "Actually, I do want a drink. John, will you join me? We can call a cab for the car." I didn't know she liked alcohol that much and smiled wryly. "Of course, I'll keep you company until we're both tipsy." So, we ordered beer. Somehow, I think we both expected we would end up drinking. Otherwise, why choose a grill? After the first beer, we switched to wine. Samantha and I surprisingly had the same taste in alcohol. As we recommended our favorite brands to each other, we both got quite drunk. "Samantha, you hate me, don't you?" Fueled by alcohol, I finally asked the difficult question. No, that's not true," she said, looking away. "But you dislike men, right? It's pretty well known among the male employees," I pressed further. Samantha sighed. "I'm embarrassed to be seen that way, especially as a manager. I didn't realize I was doing it." Then, she began to tell me why she was cold towards men. Her height had always been a complex for her. She had been tall since childhood, reaching her current height in middle school. Since boys develop later, all of them were shorter than her, and rather than seeing her as a girl, some even mockingly called her tall girl. Samantha had given up on being treated like a girl. However, in high school, things changed. Boys taller than Samantha started to appear. She became close to a 6'1" boy from the basketball team. On Valentine's Day, she bravely confessed her feelings. But he rejected her, saying, "Sorry, I think girls should be at most 5'7". That became a trauma for me. I've been uncomfortable around tall boys ever since. I thought it was a terrible story. Many understand that it's wrong to insult someone's appearance with words like fat or ugly, but why don't they realize that negatively commenting on someone's height can be just as hurtful? Then Samantha muttered softly, "You prefer shorter girls, don't you, John?" "No, I actually think I prefer taller women. It's more like they make me feel at ease." Samantha looked surprised, so I explained that everyone in my family is tall, and even my mother is 5'8". I grew up thinking my tall mother was cool. Does that make me sound like a mama's boy? Samantha shook her head. There are people like that, huh? She looked genuinely happy. It was the first time I had seen her smile so naturally, and she was so cute that my heart started racing. After that, Samantha and I began to go out for drinks occasionally. Although the atmosphere never got romantic, we did start talking more informally like friends in the bar. Then one day, I was called in by Mr. Smith, the company president. The atmosphere didn't seem negative, so I headed to the president's office without any particular expectations. I was even casually hoping it might be about a promotion. I was offered a seat on the sofa and sat down. Mr. Smith, sitting opposite me, held something. Curious, I looked closely. Inside was a photo of a woman. Photo. Do you have someone you're seeing, John? No, I don't. Then, Mr. Smith said with a smile, you remember that delivery you made out of state? The young lady there seems to have fallen for you at first sight. How about a matchmaking meeting? I was so surprised that I was at a loss for words. That young and pretty girl fell for me. Unbelievable. It's sudden, so I know it's shocking. Take some time to think about it. He handed me a file, which I accepted. There were resume and other photos of the woman. The woman in the photo was wearing a beige, elegant dress and was indeed very beautiful. She was only 28. Why would she be interested in someone 10 years older? Marriage with such a pretty girl. At that thought, Samantha's face came to my mind. What would she think if I went for this matchmaking? I returned to my desk. Hey, John, what's up? You're zoning out. Is that photos? You're not really going for a matchmaking, are you? Shoot. Mike had noticed. He quickly snatched the file from me and checked the contents. Well, she's gorgeous, and only 28. I'm so jealous, Mike exclaimed loudly, unaware that Samantha was nearby. I hurriedly took back the file from him. No, I haven't decided yet. But you'll go for it, right? You don't have a girlfriend, do you? Well, yeah, but... At that moment, Samantha quietly stood up and walked out. Concerned, I quickly followed her. Samantha, I called out to her as she was about to leave, and she stopped, looking down. John, are you going for the matchmaking? Well, that's... I clearly didn't want to do it. Because I'm in love with Samantha. But would Samantha accept my feelings? I wasn't sure. After all, Samantha and I are too different. Then she said something unbelievable. Please, turn it down. I involuntarily asked, what? She turned around and looked up at me. Her eyes were moist, and her cheeks were flushed red. Please turn down the matchmaking. I like you, John. No way. Samantha likes me. Samantha, beautiful, smart, with an outstanding figure, likes someone like me. Is that really, truly true? When I asked her seriously, Samantha nodded affirmatively. My heart felt warm with excitement. It was my first time experiencing mutual feelings with a woman, and I felt an overwhelming joy. I like you too, Samantha. Will you be my girlfriend? I took Samantha's hand, and with tears in her voice, she nodded, yes. Yay. Congratulations, Samantha. John, you actually won Samantha's heart. That's amazing. To my surprise, the sales team started appearing in the corridor. You guys were watching. I was so flustered remembering my own words. Samantha, too, crouched down, saying, I'm so embarrassed, I wish I could disappear. Keep it down, everyone. Let's get back to work. I tried to calm the commotion. But the women surrounded Samantha, excitedly chatting. Don't quit your job even if you get married. John, you owe us a treat now. Mike playfully hit me. Get back to work, all of you. What's all this fuss about? Mr. Smith, the president, even showed up. Shoot, just after the matchmaking proposal, and now I've decided to date Samantha. This is awkward. As I panicked, Mike reported to Mr. Smith. Samantha and John are starting a serious relationship with marriage in mind. Let's celebrate as a company. No, we're not talking about marriage yet. Is that so? Mr. Smith asked seriously. Oh no, is he angry? I stepped forward and bowed deeply to Mr. Smith. I'm sorry, it just happened now. I want to seriously date Samantha, so I must decline the earlier proposal. I braced myself for a scolding, but Mr. Smith laughed heartily. I always thought you two would be a good match. I never expected it to actually happen. Maybe I became a Cupid of love. He easily blessed us, leaving me relieved. I'll handle the other party, don't worry. Congratulations, he said, placing a hand on my shoulder. Thank you, I nodded firmly. When I told my parents about my first ever girlfriend, they were overjoyed and insisted on meeting her. Reluctantly, I invited Samantha to my parents' house. Wow, your mother is so beautiful. Samantha seemed mesmerized by my mother. I'm not bragging, but my mom is beautiful. I don't look like her at all. Samantha, you played basketball, right? I played until high school too. Really? But I quit in my freshman year. I injured my knee ligament, and even though it healed, I was scared of hurting it again. I understand. I hurt my knee too. They instantly hit it off with a common topic. Did your dad play sports too? Yes, he was in the same basketball team in middle school and confessed to me back then. My mom started reminiscing. Oh boy, spare me, I thought, but Samantha played along, saying, wow, making a childhood love workout all the way to marriage is amazing. By the way, did John play any sports? The conversation turned to me, making me gulp. Haha. In our family, John was the only one not good at sports. He didn't do any sports, always playing video games, my mom revealed. You still love video games, right? They were getting along too well. Really noisy. But both seemed natural, not forced, getting along well. Your blouse is lovely. Where did you buy it? Samantha shifted to fashion talk. Both being well above average height, they shared the common struggle of finding clothes. Seeing them get along so well, I felt relieved. Today is our date. I'm meeting Samantha in front of the cinema. From a distance, I saw her approaching. But she seemed different. Almost everyone she passed turned to look at her. The reason was her footwear. Samantha was wearing high-heeled sandals. Already tall, with heels, she was over 5'11". Her long legs and slim jeans were eye-catching. No wonder people were surprised. Sorry to keep you waiting. Standing in front of me, Samantha's face was at the same height as mine. This feels new. Hee hee, we're the same height now. I always wanted to try these shoes at least once, but does it look weird? I shook my head. You look amazing. Samantha smiled shyly and said, thank you. We walked side by side, naturally holding hands. I'm glad I met you, John. I feel like you'll accept me no matter what, Samantha chuckled. Yes, you can grow as much as you want. Lean on me when you're tired. I'll always be a big tree for you. I returned home early this morning, turning on the lights in my dark, empty room. Phew, I'm beat. I flopped down on the couch. Grabbing the remote from the table, I turned on the TV. I checked the weather forecast on the morning news. It's getting pretty chilly. Winter is almost here. Time flies so fast. As I thought about this, I lit up a cigarette I bought at the convenience store earlier and took a pre-sleep smoke. Every morning, it's the same routine. It's been like this for 5 years now. My name is James. I've never gotten used to living alone in this empty house, nor to the feeling of loneliness. I never imagined my life would turn out like this. It's all a result of my own actions. Sigh. I was supposed to have a brighter future. In the silent room, I found myself sighing and reminiscing about the past. I met my wife when I broke my leg and was hospitalized. She was a nurse at the hospital where I was staying, and I, with a broken leg, struggled to get used to a wheelchair and crutches during my painful rehabilitation. I feared I might never walk again. I felt anxious and worried. It was then that she started talking to me and treated me kindly, seeming like an angel. Talking to her, with her cute smile, made me feel really happy. "Hey, after I get discharged, would you like to go out for dinner with me?" I asked her almost every day. She turned me down many times, but finally, she gave in and handed me a note with her contact information. Yes, finally, I've got a date. The night before our first date, I was so excited that I had trouble falling asleep. On our first date, I was completely captivated by her. I had only ever seen her in scrubs before, but she wore a white floral dress and stylish accessories. After asking her out to eat several times, I confessed my feelings and asked her to be my girlfriend. I was over the moon when she said yes. Eventually, as our relationship progressed, we started considering marriage. "You know, I'd like you to meet my parents soon," she said, her face turning red. "I want to introduce you to my parents too. Let's plan to visit each other's parents next weekend." "Okay, thank you." A few days later, while I was at work, she called me. "Hello, what's up? I have something to tell you." "Hey, I'm at work. What's going on?" "Sorry, but I just couldn't wait to tell you." She sounded really happy. "What is it?" "Today, while I was at work, I felt nauseous and my stomach and back hurt. So I was allowed to leave work early and went to the obstetrician. And lo and behold, I have a baby." "Really?" I shouted out loud in surprise. I left work early that day, bought her favorite cakes, and as soon as I got home, I hugged her tightly. She had a smile filled with joy. She was 3 months pregnant. "We're so lucky to be blessed with a baby so soon," I said. Indeed, when we told our parents about our shotgun wedding, I was afraid they'd oppose it, but both families were actually thrilled. So, we get married, and my wife safely delivered a healthy baby girl. I felt truly happy from the bottom of my heart, looking at our adorable child. After spending a month staying at her parents' home, my wife returned home with our daughter. She was busy with the unfamiliar tasks of childcare every day. Taking care of a newborn was harder than expected, especially with the baby's night crying, which really wore my wife out. The baby cried every few hours, leaving no time for sleep. I wanted to help my exhausted wife, but my job in sales meant I couldn't avoid working late and socializing. Our company's performance was declining, and we in the sales department were desperate to bring in business. The CEO began to say in the morning meeting every day that the business was struggling. Our quotas were increasing and the employees' anxiety was growing. I had just had a child. A cut in my salary would be a big problem. I poured my soul into every sales call, working diligently. Then, one day, something happened. I arrived at the office a bit early, turned on my computer, and was about to start work when Mr. Smith, the CEO, called me. "Could you come to my office? I need to discuss something important with you." My supervisor glanced at me briefly. I had a bad feeling about it. The air in the office seemed to tense up for a moment. I straightened my back and knocked on his office door. "Sit down. You know our company's been struggling, right?" "Yes. The thing is, it's become difficult to keep the company going. I hate to say this, but you need to start thinking about your future." "What?" I felt like the blood drained from my body. "Does that mean layoffs?" As I struggled to believe what I was hearing, I was also driven by a need to do something, pleading with Mr. Smith. "Can't you reconsider? I've given my all until now. This is just, I can't accept it so suddenly. I understand the company's difficulties, but it's a problem for me too if you just spring this on me." As I said this, trembling, Mr. Smith looked into my eyes more sternly than before and started speaking. "I need you to understand. I wish I could keep you. It's with a heavy heart that I'm telling you this. You're still young. There are other places you can work." Mr. Smith said this and then looked away, downcast. True, our company's average age was high, and other employees had kids still in school, which would be costly. In comparison, my child had just been born. There weren't immediate hefty child care expenses. In the end, I accepted Mr. Smith's offer and left the company through early retirement. How should I tell my wife about this? She's already struggling with new parenting. When I explained the situation to her, she just said, "Can't be helped," and didn't say anything more. But, "Will you be able to find a new job soon?" That seemed to be her only concern. Actually, I had something on my mind. Someday I would like to save up money and open my own store. I had such a dream. I was able to retire from the company and also receive a small severance package. So, I thought I would use the money to open the small pub of my dreams. That's what I thought. When I told my wife, she just said, "I see," and seemed uninterested, saying, "Child care is tough right now." Then, I began preparing to open the pub. First, I started working part-time at a local bar I had noticed before. I also enrolled in a culinary school to learn about managing a food business, keeping busy every day. I had no time for household chores. Gradually, my wife and I began to argue more, and soon, every conversation turned into a fight. The bright and kind woman my wife once was had disappeared, replaced by a completely different person, quick to anger. Then one day, it happened. My wife finally snapped, and we had an unprecedentedly huge fight. "You don't have any intention to help with child rearing. It's like I'm raising our child alone. Quitting your job suddenly to chase a dream seems thoughtless to me," she said. My wife said something like that. I was quite selfish. My wife was an excellent nurse and would have advanced her career if we hadn't had our child. She wanted to return to work early, but couldn't because of the long waiting list for daycare. I didn't even help raise the kids, and I was the only one chasing my own dreams. Looking back, it was unfair. Back then, I couldn't understand her point of view and only argued back. One day, when I came home from work, I found a note from my wife about divorce on the table, and my wife and daughter's belongings gone. It was only then that I realized how selfish I had been. Holding the note, I cried in the now empty room where my wife and daughter used to be. But it was too late for regrets. Later, I went to my wife's parents' house, and after many discussions, we ultimately agreed on a divorce. Our daughter was young, so custody went to my wife. Alone, I threw myself into work to escape the loneliness. The room, now devoid of my wife's smile and my child's voice, was quiet and filled with emptiness. I finally understood the saying, "You don't know what you've got until it's gone." I do regret getting divorced. I hope that one day we can be a family of 3 again. With that hope, I continued working towards opening my pub. And then, 5 years later, I finally managed to open my pub. Initially, there were few customers, and I worried about whether I could keep going, but the manager from the bar where I used to work part-time visited often. He gave me various advice on the menu, pricing, and interior layout, gradually increasing my clientele. Now, the business is starting to pick up. Then, one day, as I was cleaning up after a day's work, a woman came into the bar. "Sorry, ma'am, we're closed for the day." As I said this and went out to the hall, I was shocked to see the woman standing there. It was my ex-wife, visiting the pub for the first time. "Sorry for dropping by so suddenly." "No, it's okay. Have a seat." I only saw her once every 3 months for a visit with our daughter, and we hadn't met recently because our daughter wasn't feeling well. Judging by my ex-wife's pale face, I could tell something was wrong. As I wondered, her phone rang. She then said, "Sorry, I have to go, but I'll come back another day," and ran out of the pub. What happened? Worried, I called her, but she didn't respond. A few days later, my ex-wife came to the bar again. I was concerned and immediately asked her what happened. "What was wrong the other day? I tried to contact you, but couldn't get through. I was worried." After a long silence, she finally spoke, and I was hit with shocking news. The truth is, our daughter is hospitalized at a nearby hospital. What happened? Our daughter, she has a kidney problem. When I came here last time, her condition suddenly worsened. She needs a transplant, but we can't find a donor. I failed the medical tests, so I can't donate to her, and I just don't know what to do anymore. My ex-wife was sobbing, her shoulders shaking. Apparently, my daughter's illness had progressed without many symptoms showing, and she was lonely and struggling with the unfamiliar hospital environment. My ex-wife asked me to come and cheer her up. The next day, I closed the pub and headed to the hospital where my daughter was staying. When I opened the door to the hospital room, there she was, my daughter, asleep. She looked a bit thinner. Holding my daughter's hand, I shared with my ex-wife what I had been thinking about since yesterday. Use my kidney. What? I haven't done anything fatherly for our daughter, just regret so far. I've been away, but I care about her as much as you do. It's a strange way to show it, but if I can be of help, I want to save her. I conveyed all my feelings to her. After a silence, she spoke with tears in her eyes. "I had no right to take her away from you. I was selfish back then, and I've always wanted to apologize. I'm truly sorry." She apologized. "No, the selfish one was me. I'm sorry." Then we both reflected on our selfishness. Afterwards, I went through the tests immediately, and it was confirmed that there was no problem with me undergoing the surgery. The kidney transplant was a success. The recovery went well, and I was able to leave the hospital earlier than expected. On the day of my discharge, the three of us got into a taxi, and my daughter, her eyes sparkling, said, "Do I get to go home with Dad?" "Right. Shall we all live together from now on?" she suggested. "Really? I want that," my daughter answered excitedly. I made eye contact with her. An indescribable atmosphere filled the air. "All right, let's all live together then, huh?" When I said this, my daughter was so happy that she held my hand and said, "Yay." And so, after 5 years, we started living under the same roof again. Smiles returned to the once silent room, and we spent each day closely, as if making up for the time we were apart. I vowed never to lose sight of what's important again. To make them happy for the rest of my life. That was my promise. Get out of here. You're out of your league with that low education. Don't you get it? There's no way someone as incompetent as you should be at such a prestigious party. My boss John looked down on me with utter contempt, smirking triumphantly. His face was so hideously smug that it left me in disgust. "Understood. I'll leave, just as you say." John's laughter echoed throughout the venue. With the laughter that sounded almost like screams behind me, I left the venue. I'm George, a 41-year-old office worker. I have a sister who's 5 years older than me. Our parents passed away in a car accident when I was in high school. Therefore, I've always looked up to my sister, who raised me in their stead. My older sister Emily is a strong woman. She always pulled me along, especially when I was a tearful kid. She would appear out of nowhere to rescue me from bullies, driving them away. Even when our parents were alive, Emily's training methods for me were intense. In our neighborhood, she was known as a reincarnation of a famous historical figure. "You appear quiet, so you need to be strong to not get pushed around," she would say. With that, she enrolled me in a wrestling club and trained me daily. I was rigorously trained by my sister, who was like a taskmaster, to the point of feeling nauseous. Because my sister was also in a sports club, she was like a demon when it came to coaching. Thanks to that physical training, I was no longer a target for bullies. This didn't change even after our parents died. Mom and Dad are gone, but we need to be strong. Now, intelligence is also important. Furthermore, my sister would daily insist on studying, and if I looked like I was about to fall asleep, she would nudge my head and scold me. Constantly under pressure, my grades, which were once failing, started improving. I believe it's thanks to my sister that I've been able to lead a stable life. Although I never quite managed to overcome my somewhat timid nature. Rough and rowdy as she might seem, Emily always put me first. She'd give me the best part of our treats, like the part of a snack with more filling, and would make me a late-night snack when I was up studying. It was a subtle kindness, but I greatly respected her for it. Because of her, I managed to get a job at my current company. Work was tough, but nothing compared to my sister's training. Working hard at the company, I achieved a respectable position. And it was my childhood friend Jessica, who always supported me. "You really stick with me despite my timidity," I'd say. "You're not timid, you're kind, George. Avoiding conflicts and seeking peaceful resolutions is hard. That's where I've always liked you." In that way, Jessica always supported me. She was always there, unable to leave me alone, and now she's my wife, by my side. When we decided to marry, Emily asked, "Are you sure about my scatterbrained brother?" But when alone with Jessica, she'd say with tears in her eyes, "A sister always worries about her brother. Please, take good care of George." When Jessica got pregnant, Emily sent us health products and quit smoking, a habit she loved, for the baby's sake. I still feel cherished by my sister. Now, she's a great aunt to my daughter. We named the baby Sarah, and she's growing up well. She's honest and loves to study. She took college entrance exams because she really wanted to pursue a specific field of study, but due to a high number of applicants, she didn't get into her desired college and is currently taking a gap year. When Sarah didn't pass the exam, she cried but quickly shifted her focus to reapplying. She said she'd work part-time to earn money for her gap year, but moved by her resilience, we decided to financially support her during this time. "Thank you, Mom and Dad," Sarah said with tears, grateful as she dedicated herself to studying. We occasionally have her join in on family events at work, hoping it helps relieve her stress. "Don't overdo it, you'll wear yourself out." "I'll be fine, Dad." A few hours after such conversations, I smile with my wife, Jessica, as we cover a studying Sarah with a blanket. I've built such a happy family, and am satisfied with my life. The company I work for is a great place. "George, thank you. Your clear instructions make our work easier," my colleagues say. It's nice to hear that. There's a friendly atmosphere in the office, with everyone helping and supporting each other. Whenever I had free time, I actively offered my help around. I found joy in helping my juniors grow. "Hey, you incompetent, think you're in a position to talk like that?" John's arrival instantly sours the previously comforting environment. John was headhunted from his previous company and became our boss. He's particularly fixated on academic credentials. Being about 10 years younger than me and already in a position of authority, his pride seems immense. Everyone listening to this lowly educated man will only make you dumber. You know, I graduated from an elite university. John seemed quite proud of his educational background, bringing it up at every opportunity. He would go on and on about how hard he worked for his exams and the wonderful lectures he attended in college, stories from over 10 years ago. He even asks each junior about their educational background. "Hey, where did you go to college?" He would interrogate the juniors about their educational background and alma maters, and if he found his to be superior, he would snicker condescendingly. If he considered theirs to be slightly prestigious, he would become irritated and even inquire about their high schools. What a waste, coming from such a good high school and ending up like this. Your parents must be so disappointed. He seems unable to rest without belittling something. I've always felt that actual work performance is more important than educational background. If he has time to brag about his education and mock others, he should focus on improving his work performance. After boasting, he'd just play on his phone, which was exasperating. However, since I'm his main target, I knew he wouldn't consider my opinions. "Hey, which university did you attend?" Tired of his pestering, I tried to evade the question, but he persisted. "Harvard University, Yale University." "No." "Some other national or private university." "No." "Could it be you're a vocational school graduate?" His attitude was increasingly irksome. "No." Can you please focus on work instead?" Just as I was about to continue, John burst out laughing. "So, you're a high school graduate. No wonder you can say it out loud. High school graduates aren't really decent people, are they?" John burst into a fit of laughter, calling it a masterpiece. After labeling me a high school graduate, he ridiculed me fully. Even with his previously haughty attitude, he used to call me by my name. "Hey, incompetent." After that conversation, he started referring to me as incompetent. Well, that was still bearable. Since the persistent annoyance towards the juniors was now focused on me, I thought it was better for me to take it quietly to protect them. But then it started affecting the work. "Hey, incompetent, take care of this task." Isn't this your assignment, John? And isn't the deadline tomorrow?" An almost untouched project with a looming deadline was passed on to me. Despite always being on his computer, I wondered what he had actually been doing. "You're incompetent, so having this much work should light a fire under you, right? Wait, this means overtime." Of course, it's overtime. Consider this a drill, a growth opportunity. Be grateful to a senior who's giving you a chance. With that, John left early for a night out, leaving the task to me. It was a crucial project from a client whose trust was vital. If not completed by the deadline, it would harm our company's reputation. But the workload was too much for one person. "There's no need for such harsh words. Don't worry, George, we'll help you." "Don't worry, I live alone. It's fine if I stay up all night." At that time, my juniors, having overheard the conversation, offered their help. I was truly grateful. I informed my wife, Jessica, that I'd be pulling an all-nighter, and somehow we managed to finish the project. I felt sorry for my juniors, all of them sporting dark circles under their eyes. That's when John showed up, not to appreciate our efforts, but to yell at us. "Hey, what are you doing with those foolish faces? You finished the work, right?" I was too tired to be angry, and all the credit for our hard work was taken by John. Naturally, the atmosphere in the department turned tense and uncomfortable. Feeling helpless, I let out a sigh. No matter how hard I worked, only John received praise from the clients. It seemed my exhaustion was also reaching my wife. "Are you okay? You've been looking pale lately." "Do I look that way?" "Yes, you didn't come home last night, and Sarah was feeling lonely." "I see. Something's bothering you. Would you like to talk about it?" Weary, I ended up venting to Jessica. "Actually, there's this troublesome guy who's become our boss. He's been piling work on me, but thanks to the juniors, we managed." "That sounds tough. Tell me more about it." I took advantage of Jessica's kindness and talked more about John. "How dare he? That's unacceptable." Jessica was angry on my behalf. I found solace in her. From time to time, I would vent to her about the days of being bullied by John. But considering my juniors, I knew I had to do something soon. The day my patience ran out finally came. John nudged me with his elbow and started talking to me. "Hey, incompetent. You have a daughter, right? A daughter? Don't play dumb. It's about your daughter who's taking a gap year." How does he know about my daughter? I remembered that he probably saw her at the company-wide barbecue we had. Despite a bad feeling, I asked John, "What about my daughter? That girl, failing to get into college, is just as incompetent as you." "So, what about it?" "Well, she's not bad looking. Consider yourself lucky. I'll take her as my wife. She can do household chores and cleaning, right? What? I was in shock as if struck by lightning. Daughters of incompetence like you don't have many suitors. So, this weekend, host a dinner for me and introduce her. Who knows, with the right approach, she might become a good woman. In other words, John was targeting my daughter. There was no way I could allow that. Anger made my fists tremble. If you hand over your daughter, I might talk to my uncle about promoting you. For someone like you, promotion is an honor you've never dreamed of. There's no way that's possible, I argued back, forgetting all formalities. Who would hand over their daughter to a man nearly 20 years older? John seemed surprised that I resisted. Incompetent, and yet you dare defy me. Brave of you. His face turned into a demonic scowl, and he walked away. His hostility towards me intensified after this incident. Jessica, more worried about my increasing workload and worsening complexion, tried to get me to talk, but I couldn't. The thought of our daughter being targeted by an older man would hurt both Jessica and Sarah. I couldn't bear the feeling of my own inadequacy. George, join me for a drink. It's been a while. Emily, one day at work, my sister called out to me. My sister and I worked at the same company. Though we were in different departments and positions, occasionally, she would drag me to a drink. Jessica told me a lot. Don't make them worried. Emily saw right through me. Jessica, who admired my sister, often hung out with her. They shared stories about me, even embarrassing ones from when I was a baby. Still, I was glad they got along well. Well, Jessica told you all that. Yeah, there's a bad apple at work, isn't there? My sister pressed me why I hadn't confided in her sooner. Talking to Jessica made things easier. I know you're worried, but really, well, we'll get back to that. You're still hiding something, aren't you? I flinched. I could never keep secrets from my sister. She always saw through my attempts and forcefully made me spill the beans. But this time was different. I couldn't bring myself to speak about John targeting my daughter. As I hesitated, my sister put me in a headlock. Despite her age, she's still as strong as ever. Ouch, ouch, let go. Just talk, will you? You always overthink and make things more complicated. Speak up now or it'll get worse. I gave in and told her about Sarah being targeted. Is that so? Well, all right. Leave it to me. My sister had a look on her face I had never seen before, truly fitting for a demon. Rumor has it that John is a notorious playboy in the nightlife scene. How could I ever give my precious daughter to such a vile man? I reaffirmed my resolve to stand against him. Hey. What is it? You know, you can still change your mind. John approached me again, smirking meaningfully. As I've said many times, I refuse. Is he that desperate for my daughter? Then, can't be helped. Maybe I should take your wife instead. What? Your wife would prefer an elite on the fast track like me over a futureless high school grad like you. How far will John go to mock me? Please stop the insults. You say something. Incompetent words don't reach my ears. Once I get your wife, maybe your daughter too. Hee. Seeing his vile, contemptuous face, I was overwhelmed with anger. Without thinking, I grabbed John. Don't you dare insult my family anymore. A junior who happened to pass by held me back. What, you low-educated incompetent, defying a high-educated superior? Remember this, You no longer have a place here." John left with those parting words. "George, I understand how you feel. I would feel the same if someone said that to me, but he's not worth your trouble." I was admonished by the junior and regretted my impulsive actions. After that, I endured days of John's intensified harassment and nastiness. A few days later, we received news that the current president of the company was retiring and a new president would be appointed. A party was to be held for the inauguration. I'm attending the party too. Got my invitation first, me. John was unusually talkative. The new president's name was to be revealed at the party as a surprise. With my education, I'm sure to be a favorite of the new president. Once I'm in his good graces, some incompetent will be fired for sure. Poor thing, over 40 years old. John sat back in his chair, pleased with himself. Technically, all employees were invited, but I kept quiet to avoid further comments. John spoke to me. "Oh, right. You better come to the event." "Yes, I understand." His response was a smirk. He was definitely plotting something. On the day of the party, I had to arrive at the venue early due to some circumstances. "What? No seat?" I tried to confirm my seat with the hotel staff, but the response was there isn't one. As I expressed my confusion aloud, I heard laughter from behind. It was John. What a stupid look. He pointed and laughed at me. "You don't have a seat." "Why not? I took care of your seat. It's inappropriate for a low-educated person to be here. It's only a matter of time before you lose your real seat in the company." Such childish behavior is unimaginable for an adult in a professional setting. Was he really this thoughtless? I was shaken by John's childishness. "No, I've been invited too." "That's what I'm saying. There's no seat for an incompetent. Don't dirty the celebration of the new president." I frowned at John's vulgar language even in such a formal setting. "Unless you're finally willing to introduce your daughter to me, I might consider it." I thought, really, but after seeing the person behind John, I decided to comply with his words. "I refuse about my daughter. I'll be leaving then." "What?" John looked surprised at my straightforward retreat. However, his expression quickly turned triumphant. Staying any longer wouldn't change John's mind. Tired of it all, I relaxed with a coffee in my room. But it was just a little longer to endure. Right about now, clueless John will be getting his comeuppance. As I leisurely sipped my coffee, I received a call from John on my phone. I smiled and answered the call. John's panicked voice came through. "Hey, what's this about? Come back here. What are you doing?" His voice, filled with panic and the angry shouts leaking from the speaker, made me laugh. "You didn't expect me to be the new president announced today, did you?" Yes, the new president to be introduced at the party was me. The person who was watching me from behind John was my sister. John must not have noticed her at the time. Unfortunately for you, I am the new president who was to be announced at today's party. Actually, the company was founded jointly by my sister and her husband. My sister, having studied business management with a college friend who is now her husband, teamed up to start the business. The company grew rapidly under my assertive sister and my brother-in-law, who was a genius at administrative work. After the company was on track, my sister supported him from behind the scenes. He was always kind to me, and I aspired to be like him. My sister always laughs it off when talking to me, but I can tell by looking into her eyes. She is truly in love with her husband. Admiring my sibling couple, I wanted to help and join the company. No special treatment because we're family. My sister didn't favor me, so I had to join purely on my own merits. I didn't want to be promoted easily because I was family, so I asked not to be put in a position. That's why only a few trusted people in the company knew I was the president couple's brother. Then one day, my brother-in-law was diagnosed with a serious illness. His surgery was necessary, but unfortunately, his physical strength was waning in his 50s. Unable to fully function as president, he decided it was unfair to the employees to continue. So, he stepped back to become chairman, and a replacement was needed. I was the one chosen for the position of the new president. You're taking over for my husband. I remember spitting out my drink when my sister suddenly told me this during a drinking session. Wait, hold on, there must be someone more capable in the company. With my husband's condition and my upcoming business, I need someone I can trust to kick into gear. Though she put it roughly, I knew she recognized my abilities. I chuckled at her transparent attempt to hide her feelings and scratched my head. I'm no match for my sister, am I? With Sarah involved, I had to put in a nail before anything bad happened. That's why my appointment as the new president was decided. My brother-in-law felt the same as my sister, humbly suggesting that if they were to entrust the company they started together to someone, it had to be me. Ever since we first met, I felt you had a similar aura to me. You may hold a lower position, but you have real talent. Please, take this on. Unable to refuse under such circumstances, I resolved to become the new president. This was communicated only to the executives, and those who didn't know I was their brother were surprised. But, having been informed by my sister and brother-in-law, they accepted my new role as president. However, John had no way of knowing this. Even if I told him the truth, he would have dismissed it as a lie, so I didn't think it mattered much. This party was meant to officially announce me, a family member of the former president, as the new president, and to celebrate the full recovery of my brother-in-law. But since the new president was turned away, the plan was disrupted, and instead, it became a place to denounce John. Especially as my brother-in-law, who was just recovering from illness, was not fully aware of the situation and became even angrier. While on the phone with John, I opened my messaging app and saw a text from my sister. Come back immediately. I got up and left the room. I had booked a hotel near the company, so I ordered room service coffee in my room. Therefore, I was able to return to the venue immediately. I had to go right away, or else not only John, but also I might be reprimanded. Sorry to keep you waiting. As I entered the venue, everyone's eyes were on me. It was my first time receiving so much attention. Somewhat nervously, I headed towards my sister. Phew, you're here, so, what about this fool? There were my sister, smiling frighteningly, and my brother-in-law, with an angry expression. John was trembling like a frightened deer. Wait, this is a joke, right? Someone incompetent like George can't be the new president. What are you saying? He's our brother. But he is. How dare you refer to the new president like that? My brother-in-law's angry shouts echoed through the venue. Despite having been ill just a while ago, his anger was impressive. That's when John finally apologized to me. I'm sorry. His apology might have been due to his confusion, but it didn't seem sincere. Above all, his eyes remained glaring at me. No need for apologies. I have no intention of forgiving you. Without looking at John, who was offering an apology, I responded and then smiled at my sister and her husband. Sorry, guys. Don't worry about it. As the new president, you need to establish authority. So, President, what will you do with John? It seemed my sister and brother-in-law were giving me a chance to say something to John before they made their decision. I nodded with a smile and turned to John. John, I have a lot to say to you. Of course, I was angry about being called an incompetent with low education. I paused for a moment before continuing. But what angers me most is your attempt to involve my daughter. At this, the room buzzed, and everyone looked at John with disdain. Many attendees had daughters of their own age, so they likely understood my feelings. John's face turned pale as he looked around frantically. No, it's not like that, I mean. So, what do you mean? I heard you said you'd train her into a good woman. No, it's impossible for a man in his late 30s like you to get my lovely niece. John stammered as my sister confronted him. Oh, and George isn't a high school graduate. What? That's right. We should clear that up too. Yes, contrary to what John had been insulting me with, I'm not a high school graduate. I did go to high school here, but for college, I went abroad. Abroad, but you said you weren't a college graduate. That was just your misunderstanding. You were harping on about some universities, but I didn't think telling you the truth would make any difference. You could have easily found out about my brother's background with a little research. How careless. John's eyes widened at my words. My sisters thought it was important for me to study business abroad, so they sent me to an overseas university right after high school. Well, I don't boast about my education like someone I know. That's impossible, you being uneducated. Really, you just don't get it. Didn't you want to know I wasn't uneducated? At my question, John bit his lip. Then, my brother-in-law stepped forward. We will consider this matter thoroughly. Don't expect to work as you have been until now. At his words, John's shoulders slumped. Then, George, as the new president, could you give a speech? Of course. I gave my speech as the new president in front of everyone and left. Opening the door at home, my beloved wife and daughter were waiting. Welcome back. Congratulations on becoming president. Dad, I'm glad you worked so hard. Thank you. I had a lot of delicious food at the party, but nothing beats my wife's home cooking and the beer poured by my daughter. Feeling happy, I remembered the past. I started having special feelings for Jessica during high school. I was struggling with the prospect of exams. I aspired to study economics and management, admiring my sister and brother-in-law. You should do what you love. My sister always told me, but I was determined in my decision. However, feeling burdened when my brother-in-law and sister offered to pay for my education abroad, I felt like I was relying too much on them. That's why I thought I should work and save money before going abroad, so I discussed it with Jessica. I'm always too dependent, aren't I? Not at all, you're amazing. But always relying on my sister and brother-in-law. Then Jessica took my hands and looked straight into my eyes. That's not true. Going abroad will give you the chance to acquire skills different from your sister and brother-in-law. Don't be modest. I wish I could protect my sister someday. Don't worry. First, let's meet the expectations of your sister and brother-in-law. Jessica was the one who comforted and supported me when I felt hesitant and unsure. She always gave me kind words, and gradually, she became a very special person to me. Encouraged by Jessica and my siblings, I decided to go to a university abroad. But going abroad meant making her wait. When I told her to find her own happiness, she slapped me. "Idiot. Do I look like that kind of woman to you? I'll wait for you until you come back, and don't you dare cheat." She stayed in touch, supporting me during I was abroad. The university abroad was totally different from the universities here. I pulled many all-nighters and struggled to gain skills abroad before returning home. "Welcome back." Those were Jessica's words when I proposed to her and we happily got married. Then she gave birth to our daughter, Sarah. "Thank you, Jessica." "For what?" Suddenly. "For talking to my sister. It helped me get back at him. So, of course, I can't tolerate anyone hurting you and our daughter," Jessica said with a smile. After the party, I decided to tell Jessica and Sarah about the ordeal since I had worried them. "That old man was after me. Yo, gross. I can't believe it. You got him good." They were both shaking with anger. "But Dad, you still protected me even though it put you in a bad spot, right? Thank you." Sarah thanked me. "I may be the new president, but my brother-in-law still has more authority due to handover work." When I went to the department where I had worked, John wasn't there. It seemed John really wasn't capable at his job. Looking at his computer, there were only signs of him surfing the internet. Above all, I was appalled to find that he had been reading pirated comics. I was shocked at his lack of morals. Ironically, this led to the implementation of stricter security software, which might be something to be thankful for. I decided to ask my brother-in-law about John's situation. John was originally in another company but got himself into trouble by pushing work onto subordinates, stealing credit, and causing problems with women. He had an affair with a co-worker, which was discovered by her husband, leading to a scandal and his inability to stay at his previous company. He left under the guise of voluntary resignation and applied to our company's mid-career recruitment program. My brother-in-law usually attends interviews but was absent due to illness at that time, so John's past wasn't fully vetted. Because of this, it seems the information about John wasn't properly communicated. An excellent man like me would naturally be headhunted by this company. I came here on my own accord, even though the former president tried to retain me. John boasted like that, but it was all lies, which was a letdown to learn. When my brother-in-law inquired about John's previous company, almost only negative things came up. They said, him being good is just absurd. Frankly, we were overjoyed when he left. It's rare for someone to be spoken about in such terms. In the end, my brother-in-law didn't immediately fire John but decided to transfer him to a branch office. That meant he was now under my sister's jurisdiction, but the place John was assigned to was filled with highly educated people. John, with his so-called high education, couldn't get by there and, having always pushed his work onto others, lacked experience, and was constantly getting criticized. "Hey, John is not coming anymore. Hooray." Seeing the juniors cheering made me realize how much trouble I had caused them. However, it was only a matter of time before John would resign. I am highly educated. Even with his boasting, his new assignment was meaningless. So what? In that sense, I graduated from a top university. I studied abroad. I don't boast about it, but can you please get to work? I'm your supervisor who you look down on as just a high school graduate. But in this company, if you work hard and gain experience, you're valued. Education doesn't matter here." Days of getting such responses and the news about him targeting my daughter leaking out made it unbearable for him. If colleagues and superiors didn't work out, he started hitting on women with lower education than him. "Hey, if you date me, I'll help you with your work. Just be nice to me." The day he made such an advance, he was immediately called out by everyone. "What? That's not okay in this day and age. I'll sue you. Also, it's creepy for an older man like you to ask me out." John faced angry reactions every time he tried to approach the female employees. Eventually cornered, John started missing work without notice, and finally, a resignation letter was mailed to the branch office. He couldn't endure it anymore. His previous ways didn't work, and being ignored and logically defeated was too much for him. Putting someone who only boasts about their education in a place full of highly educated people is the best. They self-destruct on their own. My sister's strategy was impressive. That's how John was successfully ousted from the company. A few months later, during a family dinner, we were walking home when I saw a man with greasy, unkempt hair and shabby clothes. His eyes were bloodshot, and I almost looked away, but then I noticed he was muttering something. "It's all your fault. Because of you all." Wondering what he meant, my sister suddenly exclaimed, "Ah, John." Yes, it was John. I didn't recognize him at first because his appearance had completely changed, but it was John. He must have had a tough time since leaving the job. He had aged so much that he looked more like an old man than me. Feeling an ominous premonition from his clearly unwell state, he suddenly shouted, "It's all because of you. You ruined my life." Then he lunged at my sister, who was leading the way. Instinctively, I stepped forward, grabbed John's arm, and threw him over my shoulder with a classic wrestling move. It was a moment where the skills my sister had drilled into me came in handy. As I looked down, John was writhing in pain and unconscious. I was glad to have protected my family, but using my skills on a civilian could hurt them a lot, so I was sweating internally. The police were called later, but my sister and witnesses explained the situation, and it was deemed self-defense against a grudge. "You did well. Thank you." I felt relieved and confident that I could protect my sister and her family. Jessica was worried about me, but Sarah was excited, cheering, "Good job, Dad." Upon checking with the police later, it turned out that John had caused other problems as well, leading to him receiving a prison sentence. To prevent anything like that from happening again, I moved to a more secure house. With hard work and sweat, Sarah got accepted into a university. Indeed, it was a tough path due to the university being at the forefront, but I'm truly glad that my daughter's efforts were rewarded. While embracing my weeping daughter, we all rejoiced. Then, Sarah was set to leave home for university. We will miss Sarah. Yes, but it's a joyous beginning for her. Let's wholeheartedly celebrate. That's true. Though it felt lonely to have one less light in the house, we sent off Sarah, who was waving from the train with a radiant smile. Now, I must firmly take on my role as the new president. I am grateful to my strict sister, my kind brother-in-law, Jessica, who supports me wholeheartedly, and my daughter Sarah, more precious than life itself. I am reminded to be thankful for all the people who have supported me and made me who I am today.